What's up, everyone? I'm about to do an Instagram live with Dr. Harry Adelson. Harry's a good friend, and Harry is an expert on stem cells. I just did a mini podcast with him where we talked about, okay, how would you manage inflammation with stem cells? And he's going to ask to join very shortly here, and then I'm going to just connect him with you. In the meantime, hey, School for Success, KitKat, and all kinds of people joining. Hey, good to see you. Rink on bellick. All right, run, Angelica, run. Sorry you can't be in here to be live because, well, Harry's coming on live. What's up, Harry? You got to ask to go live. Yeah, real briefly. My son Alan's watching us as well. So, all right. Hey, Alan's here. He's interested in what we're going to talk about. So, Harry, I can't see you you can see me on there, but you're going to have to find the button on there that says ask to join because I know other people are getting it.
Isn't it down there?
It's his button, Alan, not mine.
No, but...
Unfortunately, you're not allowed to add someone. They have to add you. Instagram is incredibly lame. Yeah, but you didn't request to join the live. So guys, this is like the most exciting part of Instagram. And Instagram, guys, I'm really starting to not like you because you don't let me set this up ahead of time. So we've got right now 225 people and I'm ready to talk to you. Harry's ready to talk to you and the interface doesn't let me invite him and I have to just wait till it pops up. So anyway, I apologize. And there he goes. He says it just came through. Hey, there's Mike and Tosh from Metal. Good to see you. All right. I have a request on here somewhere. It should be coming up. Do you like here? Yeah, look at that. Request. All right. Look at that. We should have him coming in right now. He's going to accept it. We got it. I see his thumb. I'm watching him on Skype. So, this is how much work it is to do an Instagram live that's reliable. Alan here wanted to hear what we had to say. Yeah. So he's going to listen in, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. It says you're connecting right now, Harry. I'm feeling good about this. All right. Alan's going to listen from over there. All right. Best way to stop food cravings from Bustle W. And Harry, it says you're connecting. Whenever you're in, you're in. Best way to stop food. Do you feel lonely and it's a pandemic and you're bored? Or are these food cravings coming from something else? And if so, they're oftentimes biological. And at that point, it's either fat to raise ketones or large amounts of soluble fiber that feeds your gut bacteria. I use Bulletproof coffee, which kills my food cravings, which raises ketones because of brain octane. And lately, I've been adding Bulletproof Inner Fuel, which is the prebiotic I make. And that combination, I'm just never hungry. Harry, what happened, man? Did you get anything? All right, he sent another request. Some things about mold recovery from Soul to Wellness. What's going on there with mold? It's going on. Okay, I'm getting a whole bunch of requests about mold recovery. Problem here is, Harry, I got 250 people. I don't know why Instagram kicked you off. I don't have any control over it. Instagram, come on, get with it, guys. I'm going to talk about mold here. Harry just did a documentary on stem cells, and it's one of the things that's helped me with mold, just with systemic immune functions. Harry, why don't you log out of Instagram and log back in and see if it works, and I'll accept you again. If it doesn't work, though, I'm just going to go ahead and answer a bunch of questions for people because it's not fair that Instagram's doing this. All right, so with mold. Mold causes systemic inflammation in the body. It causes something called pseudo hypoxia, which are exactly the things that are happening with the COVID virus. It's really annoying because pseudo hypoxia is a big deal. This is when your cells have oxygen, but they act like they don't because of inflammation. There's so much inflammation the blood can't get through them through microtubules and the very small capillaries. And then you end up with all sorts of muscle pain, lack of blood flow to the brain, other organs, and systemic symptoms, a lot like what happens with a cytokine storm that we're experiencing with the coronavirus. So my experience fighting toxic mold and what it does from a hypoxic thing tied to chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, very similar sorts of stuff, but a little bit more acute. So what can you do? you can address the inflammation stuff, and dealing with toxic mold in the house is going to remove one of the big inflammatory things that makes your immune system angry. So I think we're all facing more mold in houses right now because we're all home, we're cooking, we're breathing. And so we're going to have an epidemic of bad mold in houses. What do you do about that? One of the companies I started called Homebiotic. It's $29. It won't change my life if you buy it. It might change yours though. It's a probiotic you spray around your house, and that can stop mold. All right, I'm going to talk about why you have to emulsify butter in coffee, because Kay Callan is asking, and I'm going to scroll around and see if Harry's request has come in anymore, because I'm not seeing it. Okay. All right. Why? Here, I'm going to get this one more time. Add. All right, I'm adding you again, Harry. Let's see if this works. So why would you emulsify butter in coffee? Guys, this drives me insane. Hey, look at that. It worked for the third time. Instagram, I'm talking about you. All right, I'm going to tell you after we're done with Harry why you have to blend the butter in your coffee. You can't just eat a stick of butter. In the meantime, though, we've got Dr. Harry on. This is Harry Adelson from Docere Clinics. And Harry is a great friend, and he led the six hands, whole body stem cell makeover that I did. This is a big part of my anti-aging strategy, where he and two other doctors put stem cells everywhere in the body. You can have them spine, every joint, face, hair, dick, all those things. And I'm feeling upgraded. And so he's on, though, to talk about inflammation, immune systems, and stem cells. So Harry, welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much, Steve.
All right, let's just go to some questions for people. If you have questions about any of this stuff, butter, bumps, Viagra, what the heck? Look at that beaker. What beaker are we talking about? This one? You're talking about the other beaker. I know you're talking about. Muppets. All right. So stem cells. Why would you consider stem cells or exosomes for COVID?
Well, I think stem cell therapy shows promise more than anything else. So if we sort of back up and look at what we do know about the pathophysiology is, the thing that we want to avoid is this cytokine storm. Cytokine storm is where you produce all these inflammatory cytokines. And what that does is your immune system gets stuck in an activated state. And it actually creates a form of autoimmune disease. The most classic example of this is graft versus host disease. If somebody has an organ transplant or something, then they just produce so many cytokines that the body attacks itself. Well, what stem cells do is they donate their mitochondria to the T cells, which are the most important of the immunity cells. And that it causes that cell to differentiate into a regulatory T cell. Regulatory T cells actually down-regulate the immune response and are used for treatment for autoimmune disease. So there are a number of studies happening right now using stem cell therapy to treat people who are on ventilators, in comas, and in bad shape. And the data that's out so far is very promising.
So everyone's asking right now, how much are stem cells? So what is it? What is a vial of exosomes, which is sort of the stem cell factors you're talking about, that you believe could be really active against this?
So if someone was just going to do intravenous exosomes, for instance, I think it's $2,100 or something like that.
Okay, so it's not cheap. However, cheaper than a night in an emergency room almost anywhere. Here's one from That Funky Bitch. Funny name, Phunky. She's saying, why not use herbs to control inflammation? And on the podcast we just recorded, that'll be going live in the next, I think on the 30th, the next day or two. We do talk a little bit about the herbs and for IL-6 specifically. Would you do herbs with stem cells for this?
I think, you're asking me? I think stem cell, yeah. I think herbs are a great way to go. I'm unclear on the question.
Would you do herbs with stem cells?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I think there's lots of that article that you put out on how to prevent and potentially treat COVID lists all the most important herbs. So I would just refer people to that article because you hit them all.
Would you, though, at the same time that you're introducing exosomes, is it okay to have the stem cells and anti-inflammatory herbs, or would you space them out?
I think it would be fine. I wouldn't administer them, but if people had them on board, that would be no problem at all.
Okay, but that's not really in the scope of your practice normally. But if someone was doing anti-inflammatory herbs, it would be in alignment with it.
Yeah,
okay.
we ask people to get off anti-inflammatory drugs, but anti-inflammatory herbs work along different pathways and are fine to continue.
Okay. What we talked about on the podcast is that there are actually a few studies internationally of cultured umbilical stem cells. And this is something that's not available in the US because of regulatory things, but it's widely used elsewhere. And they actually had efficacy against COVID. Was it like 10 of 12 people got off the ventilator?
Yeah, well, there's a number of case studies coming out of China that are showing really quite dramatic improvement, getting people off ventilators, getting people recovered. Then there's 2 studies that have been done sort of in the Western Hemisphere, one in Israel, which I believe is the Western Hemisphere, maybe, and the other here in the U.S. And the one that was here in the U.S. was 12 patients. So this is just the preliminary findings. So I mean, this is a big study that's going to be ongoing over the coming months. But what's been released just like 3 days ago is that out of 12 people, 10 of them came off the ventilator, which is 82%. Which is the opposite of normally. If you get on a ventilator, you have, I think it's an 88% chance that you're not going to come off the ventilator.
Yeah, at least in New York. By the way, for people that's a really scary statistic. The normal percentage of people who come off ventilators successfully is only 20%. So 80% of the time you go on a ventilator, you're toast. But if you have COVID and you go on a ventilator, it's 88% of the time. So it's worse, but ventilators are pretty much a very bad situation anyway. Here's a question, interesting. So Strings of Jupiter says, there's been a lot of focus on mitochondria in the nootropic world. Yeah, who do you think created the world's first whole body broad spectrum nootropic based on mitochondria? It's called Unfair Advantage, it's my product. So does taking mitochondrial supplements somehow potentiate stem cells in our bodies? This is a really interesting question. So as a stem cell guy, do you recommend mitochondrial enhancement before, during, or after a procedure? And if so, why?
I would say all of the above. I mean, it's not something we regularly recommend, but the little bit that I know about it, I think it would be perfectly safe to do leading up to the treatment and then shortly thereafter. Okay.
Transform with Kelly says IV or injected, as in like IM or intramuscular. I think the answer would be IV. Based on our interview. Is that correct?
So to be clear, I don't treat COVID here at my clinic. I treat musculoskeletal pain disorders.
Yeah, well, that's all you're allowed to. I get it.
Sure, but for these studies that are coming out of Israel and then recently the U.S. and China, these are all intravenous studies.
Have you ever had a patient come in coughing, saying, "I have musculoskeletal pain"?
No.
Just checking.
Yeah.
TY says Andrographis is great for L6. Yeah, that's the top herb I recommend in my piece. Andrographis is something I use when I fly to make sure I don't get sick anyway. Let's see. Here we go. I'm looking, speaking of China, okay, can we talk about a bunch of conspiracy stuff that no one knows unless they're the ones who did it? We're not going to do that. By the way, it might be real, might not, but there's no way you or me are going to know, and we can totally spend all of our time thinking about it and waste all that mitochondrial energy that could have gone into doing something. So speculation doesn't fix the problem. So I'm going to recommend that you focus on being highly resilient, and whatever happened will come out after you're dead, probably. And if you don't believe me, who killed Kennedy? All right, that isn't even out. So until then, let's not worry about the conspiracies. Let's worry about solving the problem. All right, what are we talking about? Interpersonal neurobio healing. We're talking about stem cells and COVID and inflammation. I'm looking here to find some good things. All right, there's this douchebag named Wolf, whatever. All right, you're spamming the last thing. I'm gonna ban you, and you'll never see one of these again. So either cut that shit out, or I'm banning you the second we get off this, and I'll just be invisible to you, and you'll miss me. There we go. All right. Here we go. Let's see. You know how many hearts I just got for that? So, well, if you're getting more social engagement for me by being such a douche, thank you. Other questions I love. Anything that Bulletproof diet you would avoid? Let's see. I'm guessing this might be a question for you. You know, would you be concerned about your higher fats or anything like that?
Concerned about? I didn't hear the question.
Oh, the question is anything on the Bulletproof diet you might avoid during COVID or during stem cells. So, I mean, I'm like, what would you criticize in the Bulletproof diet, or are there any things that you'd recommend we don't do?
I think that people really lose their appetites. People who get sick completely lose their appetites. So I'd say anything that works, as long as you stay, you know, keep eating. And, I don't see any problem with the Bulletproof diet.
But I actually do see a problem with the Bulletproof diet if you're dealing with COVID. And this is in a blog post that's coming up here. And there are phases of the Bulletproof diet. This is not a keto bro, dirty keto diet. There's so many kind of knockoffs, like just never eat a carb again and you'll be strong. It actually doesn't work like that. So the studies show that when you have a viral infection, having glucose present increases your ability to heal. But when you have a bacterial infection, having glucose present makes the bacterial infection worse. So what do you have? Do you have COVID, which is viral, in which case you would want to have some glucose, but not high blood sugar because that suppresses immunity. So basically you should have some carbs with some fat and some protein so you don't get a blood sugar spike, but you have enough blood glucose because you'll probably win, right? So that means on the Bulletproof diet, don't be in a ketogenic phase of the diet when you're cycling in and out. Be at a phase where you're having some carbs, especially at dinner, but you're not going crazy on the sugar. So it's a small tweak. And should you always have ketones present? Yes. There are all sorts of reasons from an inflammatory perspective you want ketones present. So pour some brain octane on whatever the heck it is you're eating. It'll raise your ketones. Have your coffee, which doubles ketone production in the morning. That's an effect of caffeine. I think you're going to be good. All right, Harry. Let's go away from just just the COVID question here and things like that. I've been meaning to ask you this: how often, if cost is no object, and I'm planning to live to 180, how often should I do a whole body, 6-hand stem cell heavy duty makeover? I mean, and guys, just to be clear, this is something that's like a heavily loaded Tesla level of many. It's a very, very big rejuvenation procedure, as close to the Captain America. They put you in a chamber and you come out change thing that I know of. But if this is available for everyone, it was affordable. How often is this? A once every 5-year kind of thing? Once every 2 years? Once every 10 years?
Yeah, so I think what you said, 5 years, that's sort of what I have in mind.
Okay.
So the idea with full body stem cell makeover, we take a large volume of bone marrow stem cells, a relatively large volume of fat derived stem cells, supplement that with a bunch of exosomes, and then inject that into basically all the moving parts of the body, the entire spine from the base of the skull down to the tailbone at every level. Turn the person over, both shoulders, both elbows, both wrists and thumbs, both hips, both knees, both ankles, and great toes. Now, the reason I wouldn't go more than 5 years is because we're taking quite a few stem cells out of the body. We're putting them right back in, but we're temporarily reducing the population in their, in the bone marrow and in the fat. Now, they very quickly regenerate and replenish, but if you do that too often, theoretically, you could shorten telomere length. So I think once every 5 years would be prudent. Once every 5 years.
I'm getting one more question that's useful around post-COVID infection protocols. And our mutual friend Matt's doing some work with those that do include exosomes. Look, anytime you're exposed to hypoxic damage to the cells, which is what you're getting from COVID, then you're going to need to replenish cells. And you got to look at hyperbaric. And this is something that's well understood. I've interviewed Dr. Harch on the show about that. For the neurological side, I'd be, frankly, in the middle of an attack, I'd be in hyperbaric as much as I could to keep the tissues oxygenated. But aside from exosomes, which we've already talked about, and stem cells directly, is there anything else you would look at doing as a musculoskeletal person? People do have musculoskeletal pain after COVID some of the time. what would you look at doing? I'm just giving your medical knowledge.
Well, one of the things that I'm adding is that ozone dialysis, where you take the entire volume of blood, put it through a machine, filter the blood, ozonate the blood, and then put it through ultraviolet blood irradiation, put it back into the body. So that's something that, and that's, you've talked about that, you know, Matt Cook, we know, does that. I'm getting the same unit that Matt has.
Cool.
I think that's probably like a good friend of mine, a guy I used to share my practice with, just got off 3 weeks on the ventilator, and he's going to be the first person I'm going to treat with the ozone dialysis.
Very, very cool. Well, Harry, it's a good chance to connect. I'm glad we got to do it. I really premiere of the stem cell solution. It was the last business trip that I was on, was a chance to hang out with you and Mark Hyman and a bunch of other good friends in Park City before it became pretty clear that this social isolation thing is what we're doing. Whether or not it actually shows that worked better. In Sweden, they seem to be getting perfectly average results without having done that. So maybe we just shot our economy in the foot. But hey, being the one person out there who's saying I'm not going to do it when we're all agreed to, that's just poor manners. And if we pick a strategy as a society, it's what we're doing for a while. So anyway, your event for your documentary was the last one I did. So I miss you, brother. Thank you for all the injections. Thank you for all the knowledge. Thank you for all the anti-inflammatory exosome talk for all the people tuned in on the channel. If you guys ever want stem cells, you have pain, Dr. Harry did the first stem cell procedure I ever had done. He's done many of my stem cell procedures. Some of them are on video. They're all in my books. And he's one of the guys who really fought the good fight to even get these to be allowed in the US. So thank you, Harry.
Thanks, Dave.
Tune in for Bulletproof Radio episode, whatever the heck it is, that's coming out either tomorrow or the next day with Harry, where we go deeper on this stuff. Harry, I'll chat with you later.
Okay.
All right, guys, I promised you that I would tell you why you had to emulsify butter. You still want to hear about that? Okay, this drives me nuts. It's because when I first discovered Bulletproof coffee, I remember I went to South by Southwest a long time ago, and I was really hungry. And I said, all right, I don't have time. I hadn't quite figured out how to make Bulletproof coffee on the road. So I ate a stick of butter in front of like an SVP from Twitter, and I drank a shot of espresso. And I just felt like crap, and I was still hungry. And every time I've ever tried to do it, a rational person, why would I bother? Eventually, I funded $50,000 worth of research at University of Washington on basic water chemistry with Gerald Pollack, who's been on the show a couple times. And he's a guy who really discovered and has looked into the biological effects of the exclusion zone of water. And here's the short version of why you blend your Bulletproof coffee instead of just eating butter and coffee. This goes far beyond the keto diet. This is full Bulletproof mode. It's because when you when you drink any water, your body converts that water, which is what we'll call bulk water, into something called exclusion zone water. And it does this with vibration or infrared light, i.e. heat from cells. And when that water is exposed to those things and is near fat, oh, newsflash, all of your cells are made of tiny droplets of fat. That's what the cell membrane is. So now you have water that's by fat. The water creates a thin layer of gel-like water, and that's what your body needs to use in order to fold proteins or to make ATP. Now, in Tibet, where I first had yak butter tea, it's 18,000 feet elevation. There's no oxygen to speak of compared to what we're used to. There's also no heat. It's cold. It was 10 degrees below zero when I was there. So these smart Tibetan people, this little lady who gave me yak butter tea, they figured out that if they put the butter in the tea and they use a handheld butter churn, it goes cha-chunk, cha-chunk, cha-chunk kind of thing, they drink the tea and they get a burst of energy, which is what I experienced, which made me come back and experiment to figure out why, so we could do what became Bulletproof coffee. And it turns out that blending really matters because it makes exclusion zone water. And then you drink it and your cells don't have to make bulk water. They can just use it to directly shortcut to making energy. And when I paid for the research and Jerry did his work at the lab at UW, they found out that droplets of butter fat next to water create the thickest zone of exclusion zone water that he's ever seen. And they had a very hard time testing brain octane oil because brain octane oil is so liquid that just being able to look at it under a high resolution microscope was difficult. So we actually have photos of the change in water chemistry by butter. So I will tell you, between the polyphenols that are in Bulletproof coffee, they're called melanoids, between those, between the heat that's in there, between the physical vibration or agitation from blending it or shaking it really well. And Bulletproof coffee works better if you blend it longer. This is well understood. I've noticed it. I've talked about it. Other people have confirmed that. So it's this magic thing where there's probably 6 different mechanisms for it, but you put it in that blender, you blend it for 20 seconds on high with hot coffee, with even a tiny bit of butter will do it because the droplets spread everywhere. If you're hungry, you can have more. And you put the brain octane there to get ketones. And that combination of ketones from the caffeine in the coffee, ketones from brain octane oil, the water chemistry change from the butter, and maybe from the brain octane, you drink that, you're like, oh my God, something shifted. So that's why, to answer your question, you have to blend or emulsify the butter. You cannot do it without that. And so many people don't quite get it. Otherwise, you have to have bile in your body, whose job it is to emulsify fats, but it happens lower down and you don't get that water effect. It's pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna answer like 2 or 3 more questions for you, and then I think it's lunchtime. And my son is here, who's hanging out. I'm gonna check my calendar, see how much more time I have for you. Oh, he's whispering, is almost a stage whisper. Yep, he says, Daddy, let's do virtual reality. We're 99% towards getting our Oculus Rift reset up. I've had an Oculus here for like 2.5 years, and I've used it like 4 times because I wanted to do VR because I'm a tech nerd and just didn't have time to do it, frankly. And I found out, by the way, I could fit my 2 dark glasses underneath it because I would do my VR at night, and I didn't want like blue lights strapped to my face because that'd be dumb. And this isn't an Oculus thing. I actually met with the engineering team at Microsoft about their augmented reality and talked to them about circadian biology so that they could do that. I'm like, yeah, build that in. So they're actually, I'm assuming that they did it, but it was really cool to talk to the guys making these things. And I'm blanking the name of the Microsoft augmented reality goggles, HoloLens. It's super cool. All right. Here we go. Last question from In the Void 20. I wonder if Hashimoto's can benefit from this. I wonder how Dave defeated his Hashimoto's. I wonder how you lowered your antibodies completely. Antibodies will come and go, but basically avoid toxic mold in your environment. It's a big deal. It triggers Hashimoto's, and there are studies about that. And not eating any grains except for maybe white rice. Other grains will trigger problems like that. And let's see, other things like that, just regularly reducing systemic inflammation and also taking your thyroid hormone because you need to let your thyroid heal in order to do that. All right, my friends, I'm going to go do some Oculus Rift and have the first meal of the day. I've been intermittent fasting today like I do most days, and it's probably going to be either a lamb or a pig that I raised myself. And that cough, definitely COVID or pine pollen, because if I shake a tree right now, you get this massive cloud of yellow nastiness. Haven't figured out how to hack that one other than to cough it up. See you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in, and check out the new podcast on Bulletproof Radio. Bye.
Ready?